Welcome to the podcast. Today's guest is Darren Myers. So we're at the Esbe HQ all the way over in Sweden. So Darren's kindly brought a few installers from the UK over for a tour of the factory. So we thought we'd do a bit of a podcast. So Darren, if you can give us a bit about you and your role, and we go from there.
Morning, Dom. Thank you very much. Lovely to have you here in Sweden. My second country now, because I'm here so often. My role is to set up the business for the UK for Esbe products. I've been around for about 117 years. Probably sold in the UK for 50 years, but they need a proper presence. So fortunately for them, they took me on.
Brilliant. So I think we were speaking yesterday about the hurdles of getting the products known out to the UK, because Esbe pretty much have a valve for everything. So, you know, we're predominantly a heat pump podcast. So how do we go about getting the right valves in front of the installers?
Everything is knowledge. What I've tried to do is get the key installers across to Esbe so they understand the system design. They understand heat pumps, you know, great pipe fitters, that's not an issue, but it's choosing the right valve and why.
Yeah, I think, especially on this trip, we've got a real great mix of people, haven't we? There's obviously, you know, we've got Kim, Betty, Richard Burrows, so two guys that really know their onions. I mean, this is something, you've done several of these trips, so you plan on doing sort of many more?
Yes, definitely. You know, Sweden's a fantastic place, and when you understand the technology, the effort and the people, you realise how good the product is at that point. And you can't sell that in England without seeing it.
I mean, absolutely. I was blown away by just the presentation and just the ethos, and like it's a family-run business that's stood the test of time, and they've innovated, and they're really keen to take on feedback from us, the installers, and push things forward and come up with new ideas. So if people were sort of looking to get on a trip, what do they do? Just get in contact with you?
Yeah, please do. You can get my contact details from the website. Very easy to find. You know, Dom, you've got my number. You know, so just pass it on.
Right, great. So we'll do that. So what we'll do, we've got Henrik on next. So we'll say thank you very much for the trip, and we're off to a factory tour. So the camera's going to be out. So we'll sort of hopefully get some decent quality photos and videos, and we'll see you at the end.
Thanks, Dom. See you soon.
Welcome to the podcast. Today's guest is Henrik Hallberg from Esbe. So you're the innovation manager. Can you give us a little bit of background about your role and what it entails?
Yeah. When I started, so to say, the business life, I was starting with oil and gas burners and been all over Europe, then trying then to fit this into the boilers out in Europe and for instance in UK. And after 10 years there, ending up as a development manager, I then switched to the water side as for Esbe then. And to utilize then how then to bring the heat out in the system, and being on a product manager levels, and now as an innovation manager. And that's innovation is then, we see ourselves, Esbe in particular, as an enabler, and enabler comes then into innovation, and to understand the customer needs and how then to utilize the equipment in a proper way for the all good for the people.
Right. So obviously I spent a bit of time yesterday having a look around, so I'm really interested to find out more. So if you can give us, what would a typical day look like for you?
A typical day, based on the history from the day before and the week. Okay, there's a long-term schedule, and you're working across that, and then occasionally, most every day, there are then some new occasion, not new, but situations are throughout with customers, how then to solve this thing. Could be problematics, but also, I would like then to fit this gas boiler with this heat pump, and how to do that in a good way. Okay, then we started the discussions. Is it then 5 pieces or is it then 5,000 pieces? And then how to make it then easy to use and easy to install and things like that.
Right, because you guys do a lot of work sort of OEM for the larger manufacturers, sort of Wiesmann, Valiant, to name a few of the bigger ones. So would they come to you, because obviously you're well known in the industry, would they sort of come to you and say, look, I've got this heat pump, can you help us out?
Yeah. Then the big ones, the big five, they're coming then and address, okay, we have a product line in terms of heat pumps or gas boilers, and how then to bring it then in a good way. Could one size fit all? It's a good wording, but sometimes you need then to have 2 or 3 versions then to cover a complete range to make it good, simple.
Yeah, and then sort of what, in terms of your percentage split of your sales, what are you more OEM than sort of individual?
The market trends has changed during the years. Could be both that the OEMs want to take a bigger cake of the market share of the market, as well as the plumbers as a communities has been less out there. So therefore, the OEM part has increased from 1/3, let's say 10 years ago. Now it's almost reaching half of our turnover.
Right. Okay. Obviously, so we're from the UK. We're traditionally a bit behind compared to the rest of Europe with our thinking, but obviously we're slowly getting there with the heat pumps. Esbe is known among sort of the more elite installers as being like a high quality standout product. Why do you think that is? What would you say are the reasons that people choose Esbe over other manufacturers?
I think it's me personally, but also taking in consideration the inputs. So it's our long presence on the market. We are listening. We are adopting, and obviously, here in Sweden, we can't test everything what's going on in Spain, UK, or Russia, or any other countries. But based on our possibility to adopt, we have been then successful in doing then the small steps, and the small step can also be in innovation.
So some of the points, I mean, because I asked for feedback from people I speak to on Instagram, and some of the common things that come up are the impressive flow rates through your valves. Is that, obviously with heat pumps, that's vital, isn't it? You know, compared to boilers, but heat pumps especially with the higher flow rate, obviously the lower flow temp. So is that an active part of the design process? Is that where a lot of the R&D is spent?
We have spent, been looking in the future, looking into the stars, what will come, and Sweden already started in the mid-80s with the heat pumps, and a lot of experience, which means that everything was not successful. We have been in there and following it and supporting it and making it possible. And this could be one of the reasons for that to balance out the pump energy used, as if you have less pressure drop, you have less pump energy, and by that you save the electricity, electrical energy. And that has been a vital focus now. It's now a decade or so in Europe. Yeah,
I noticed that from the presentation that we attended yesterday. That was a big part of Esbe's ethos, the test again before it even reaches market. So with the emphasis on that testing side of things, do you find there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make the cut and won't ever go to market?
There are evolution on the way in order then, we test in clean water, but out there is never ever clean water. So then how we then put in the margins, which water should we test with, and what are the surroundings, and particular now when we are leaving the high temperature system, oil and gas boilers, and going to heat pumps, where heat pumps has lower temp, where the oxygen stays longer in the heating system. What could that cause the effect for the materials we are using in our products?
Right. I've got a lot of questions to get through that people have asked, so I'll try and sort of rattle a few of them off. So one thing that caught my eye, and a couple of people have asked about from yesterday's presentation, was your circulation units. Are they a reasonably new products to market? what's the thinking behind those? And I think there was one that caught a few of our eyes, which was the hydraulic separation part. So can we go into that in a bit of detail?
Yeah, I will for sure do my best. The reason of going then into pump groups or application groups, as we call it, is that the need of having a safe and secure and faster installation is there, and then to do the pre-configured or pre-plumbed units are then in many countries now in favor. Okay, and then how then to set up then we do the setup with the pump and the mixers used, so we get a proper flow through it. We get an authority for the valve when doing as in a mixing device. As if it's just on off, then you don't need a valve authority in that perspective. But to get that pre-plumbed function in a good way, so the installer just install and forget. And when going in also in the pump groups, we have then single groups and the ones with hydraulic separations. And the hydraulic separations are there in order to secure the primary circuit for the heat pump. So you have a flow. If you don't have a flow, you get then on certain heat pumps then alarms, B alarms, A alarms, then which could cause then malfunction in the system, but also a lot of phone calls to the installer, which is not welcome.
Absolutely. On that note, I think obviously coming more and more into the UK market as we're slowly catching up with Europe, it's typically the installers that sell the product. They'll recommend it. So one thing again that I spotted yesterday was how keen Esbe are to listen to installer feedback and implement that in things going forward, any little tweaks. So from an installer point of view, that's like a real big tick in the box. So is that a big part of your ethos, like listening to what they say and just moving things with installers? I'd imagine the markets are fairly different.
Yeah, we see one of the benefits. You could put in then a lot of money in marketing, but we have also seen that the mouth-to-mouth spreading, like installers are. One installer talked to another. Oh, today I have made a good installation as well yesterday, and no problems. And then we try then to incorporate as much as possible of the installer point of view. Of course, there is a difference in between the Spanish one, the UK, and the Swedish one. And for instance, TMVs in Sweden are predominantly compression fitting 22. In Germany, it's 1 inch male, and France 3/4. It has the same KV, it has the same flow rate. In that perspective, UK is more like Sweden in terms of connection. So we try then to listen out what is the habits and code of practice in the different countries in order to be,
brilliant.
Installer's best friend.
Yeah, and that is, I say, for the UK market, I think. From speaking and hearing some of our feedback, I think once you win the installers over, you've cracked it. And I think it is just removing any barriers. So there was one installer I think on our group that struggled a little bit with the setup, but again, a typical installer in the UK, open the box, don't look at the instructions. Why isn't this working? I saw a post and I flagged this down. I was like, we just need to have a look at this, and again, it was read the manual. So we've discussed about little installer videos, just very quick snippets, because that's what we want, because typically we're rushing in the UK to get it done. You know, it's the very last thing you set up, head on, set up. It's the end of the day. The customer wants heating and hot water. They don't want to sit there and read through pages and pages of manuals. So I think one thing we've taken from that is like little short video snippets.
When you mention these videos, we are now in a stage where videos is easy to do and easy access. 25 years ago, it was not that easy access, and we see for instance, our product platform of the mixing valve and actuator or VRG range. Me personally, I'm calling them Sweet 16. 16 ways then to fit it. Okay, that flexibility caused then some complexity. And these then videos with tips and tricks would, of course, then make it more easier for the installers to use. Otherwise, the flexibility is a complexity and not used.
Yeah, this was covered quite thoroughly yesterday. One of the guys, Richard, brought it up because typically we would have, if it was, I think it's changing the UK's mindset, which typically tradesmen, plumbers especially, are very set in their ways. We're used to, if it's a diverter valve, mid-position, it goes up in the middle, it can go left or right. I think the fact that yours can do any orientation it wants is just letting the installer know, because like again, Richard mentioned he's seen one install where it's come out, they've gone in that way to go around there, where they could have just spun the valve around, set it, and gone that way. So I think it's just a whole conversation and an education piece for the installers. I think the good thing about the heat pump market in the UK, people want to learn more, and it's consumers as well. We're finding more and more that the end user is just as interested in the product a lot of the time than the installer is. So that's quite refreshing. So I think although we're going to have a lot of installers coming on board, I think as installers come on board, you'll see consumers starting to ask for it as well, which I think must be only a good thing.
Yeah, and there also when adding new heat pumps, normally or most oftenly, they are coming then to an old system. Okay, and then how then to utilize a new device with different temperatures, different delta T's over the heat pump versus the old system, and what then should be the installer be thinking of. It's not only the heat source itself, it's more how then to make the system, and we try to be a part of supporting it, but we don't know every system.
Yeah, and that's
in Europe.
Yeah, I think, and with the UK specifically, we've got such a vast array of housing stock from new to old. Sometimes it just isn't physically practical to rip up floorboards or dig out walls if we've got old listed buildings. So I suppose it's all about finding the happy medium. Yes, you could get more efficiency, but at the cost of ripping apart somebody's 300-year-old house, it's just not an option. So I suppose with the better pressure losses on the Esbe valve, it's just a better piece of the puzzle, isn't it? It's one extra thing. So, I mean, obviously we've talked about the amount of work that goes into that. What do you find is the Swedish housing stock similar to that of the UK? Is there a lot of retrofit, or are you already there because, like I say, because you're that much further ahead of the UK?
We have a large, many houses was built in 60s and the 70s and 80s with fairly big pipes. Coming then in during the 80s, then the pipes are getting smaller in order then to be more cost efficient. Then it starts then to get tricky then how then to balance out the size of the pump, the mixing valve, and to get heat out to the last radiator in the system. We have in Sweden a mix of 2-pipe and 1-pipe system, and so there could be very much of confusion out there in order to get a proper system.
So that's almost tackling the hardest point. So, I mean, we tend to have a handful of 1-pipe systems where it's pretty much a no-go. That would be repiped. And it's very rare to see someone trying to fit a heat pump on a 1-pipe back home. So how many applicable valves have you got that would work across a heat pump range? Can we cover that?
That's quite many.
Quite a broad.
We have a range of changeover diverter valves. Then when you should do the priority in between the heating and hot water production, we have quick ones which are newly put on the market with 2 seconds changeover time. We have then a little bit older, which has then 3 seconds, and we have then also ball valve things, which is then much slower then. But these systems then, there is a balance in between speed and kV, the flow rate.
Yeah. So where would the faster valves be more applicable for? What was the need for bringing them into the market?
Most of them has been required. Okay, you have doing the heat, and you have been doing the hot water, producing the heat for the hot water cylinder, and when you change over to the heating, it's a need of doing a fast changeover. Otherwise, you are then cooling down the hot water cylinder, and you're putting out too much temperature out in the heating system. And depending if you have then a steel pipe or underfloor heating with other tubes which are then temperature sensitive, then the quick changeover is a need.
Right. Obviously, there's a lot of talk in the UK at the moment. It seems to flip-flop between buffer, no buffer, and obviously open loop being the desired. I mean, have you got all sorts of valves that can take care of that as well?
Yeah, there are for sure different valves, and typically people are asking them for mid-port valves or diverter changeover valves. But then the Sweet 16, our range of RRVRGs with different kind of actuators, you could do your own mix or do your own combination to be a proper way of doing that and that installation. But if you are, it's good for the ones who know what to do. Yeah. For the ones which are not that good, how to make an easy recommendation. Then we limit our assortment for an easy installation.
And obviously, one thing I noticed that came in handy for that we've been showing yesterday is your app that's available on the phone. Again, that saves a lot of time. You can type in just a couple of values and it'll then give you the answer, the best case, and then the backup. Again, something like that is like really valuable. But again, it's just, from our point of view, it's just getting it in front of the installers to show them. Because I think, me included, coming from the gas background into heat pumps, although it's still heating, it's almost like learning a new trade. So I think it's demystifying that first install for the installer and giving them enough confidence to say, yeah, I need this valve for this size pipe work, for this amount of heat input. Just, again, dropping those barriers. And then once they've done one, I mean, I'm trying to sort of champion a bit of a buddy scheme where somebody looking to transition from an installer point of view from gas boilers to heat pumps can go along with a more experienced heat pump installer, and they can show them the ropes. I don't think it's difficult. It's just like you said, it's you don't know what you don't know, and it's just doing that first one to get it across the line and making it familiar. So I think things like the app, the website looks easy to use, and everything's easy to find. But again, I think from the UK market, we only probably need a handful of your products to do 95% of our work. So in terms of the development, do you set aside, obviously with all the feedback from installers, do you set aside like an active amount of time where you would work on new products or on tweaking existing products to make them better?
I would say both. I think first we are starting, is it possible to do the tweaking? The tweaking is, in many perspectives, easy because we have a lot of experience. Okay, with all the different kind of waters. Okay, what if we then could do some tweaking in order to increase the flow rate or do the controllability a little bit better? Okay, then we are faster to market than coming to the market with a new complete composite valve, for instance. Okay, then we should go through all the water qualities, habits, with what type of tools are we using in each countries, and so then the time to market is it's longer, and of course we are would like them to bring also new products, but installers out there, they face new products not only from Esbe but from anyone, and a new product is also, there's a learning curve. Yeah. For all new products there is a learning curve, and learning is time and time is money. So then how to make both the installer happy and the end consumer happy.
I'd imagine you must get the same questions from installers relatively frequently. Is there like a handful of questions that they come back to you with, or sort of asking you the same problems where they struggle to do something?
There are a lot of which are similar. Sometimes the same questions. Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes, yeah. The mother of the education in Sweden, it's the repetition. So perhaps it's not only one time we needed to spread the word. Okay, use this one. We need to repeat it in order then to get the learning curve
and
up.
get people hands-on to do it. Because I'd imagine with obviously your market being installers, they typically learn by doing, don't they? Holding the valves in their hands, setting it up. So it's going through that a couple of times to do it.
And I have not experienced myself, but there is a wording saying that the installer plumber meets then 200,000 products in a year. Okay, how then to get a good footprint in the daily life? And that's our mission there to be there and make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, I think obviously, with Esbe being known for the better quality, I think that's a really solid point that can be hammered home. It's like, there'll be less callbacks, less failures than people trying to fit inferior, cheaper brands. So buy the premium product, fit it once. There's a saying in the UK, there might be one in Sweden, it's buy cheap, buy twice. So, pay for the premium quality product and let it do its job.
Yeah, Esbe started to do valves in 1936 to be in the water loop. Okay, my neighbor had one of the first mixers in their house, and it was in that house until 2002.
Oh wow!
But that was a 2-inch system. Now it was replaced with a 22mm copper system. Completely different.
Have you got that valve in the museum?
Yep, we have.
Oh, brilliant.
Yep.
Maybe get a few photos of that later.
Yep. So it's about 5 or 6 times the size of that mixing valve versus the size it was replaced with.
Brilliant. So back to the valves. I had a question from someone on Instagram talking about sort of your rotary 2-port valves. We would typically use a straight 2-port or a diverter ball valve. I know you guys offer sort of a lot better. Someone like Damon Blakemore, he gets mentioned a lot because he's like a good quality installer. Can you talk to us a bit about what you would suggest from your range and use instead?
Yeah, ball valve has advantages, but for good and for worse, they have also a type of, with my wording, then sticking forces. So when it has been standing for quite some time, the amount of force needed to move it requires a lot of the actuator, and by that there are quite a number of failures in the market. And with our shoe valves then, which has then not the same issues with the sticking forces, the simple lifetime is then extended by not reaching the excess forces or torques which are required to move them. And also typically we offers then for the same valve size a higher flow rate on the valve versus the ball valve, especially when you have a diverter or changeover valve.
Right. How would that differ from a ball valve? What would it look like inside?
In size, you have the same connection. You have most likely, from the actuator point of view, the same or less size of the actuator when using the Esbe products.
So, are either of those then there?
Yeah, we have the 3-port shoe valve, the VRG 130 range, which then comes then in different versions depending on the flow pattern. And we also have a high flow range, which is called VRG 300 series, where then less pressure drop, but not the same let's say valve authority, which is not needed when you do the changeover function. So then you get a very high flow rate in a compact. So you buy that instead of a DN32 valve, you could use a DN25, and then you save cost.
Yeah, because I suppose there's physically less of it. So how does that internally, the internal workings, how would that differ?
So the machining and of the inner parts and doing the flowways in a efficient way, we have then been able to reduce the turbulence, and turbulence causing then pressure drop and causing then noises. So by quite of a common way of machining, we have made it in a easy way. As you mentioned earlier today, we tweaked the solution a little bit.
On that note, again, you mentioned sort of pressure drops. We covered a bit in our discussion yesterday, because obviously we've got installers at different levels, but there's a couple of guys that are completely new to heat pumps, almost hydronics. They would be more just gas combi boilers. So one of the questions that popped up was like KVS. And what is it? Can we just go over that a bit for those that are sort of completely new to the industry?
KVS, and that's the unit we are using then. Okay, how then to compare one versus another valve, and that's the throughput of the valve at 1 bar differential pressure. So that is KVS value. The KV value is then the actual flow on the actual pressure drop. But in order then to compare each one to another, then there is a uniform way of comparing it. So then it's done with 1 bar differential pressure.
Right, got it. And I suppose that's where like the secret sauce lies with Esbe, spending all that time in development on improving that and getting that as best as you can for the size of the valve. Is there always like a payoff between obviously the size of the valve and that figure?
The payoff in reducing electrical consumption, depending on the rate for kilowatt hours throughout Europe, differs a little bit. So I would say in Northern Europe there is a good payoff on such investment, but in Southern Europe, not nice to have in that perspective. But you get payoff by having a less size in the valve versus
because it's physically moving a smaller item.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Got it. And then that's all linked back. So all of that you've mentioned there, I assume that is at the forefront when you come to, I mean, because how old are these valves? How many years have they been around?
We launched it for the market 2006, 2007.
Right, okay.
And this is then, is it now the 4th generation?
Right.
We started one cast iron version 36.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the mid-50s we came with 2nd generation, and then going out over to brass in the 60s, 70s, and now this 4th. And now we are in the planning for the 5th generation.
Right. I was going to say that bit of information there is vital, because it shows that it just follows your ethos, doesn't it? You're ever evolving. You're making those in-house tweaks and changes for improvements. And you're looking to improve, I assume, efficiencies, flow rates, but is there anything else that sort of causes you to innovate and adapt?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the code of practice in UK, perhaps you're using today two-port valves instead of a 3-way valve with doing the same function. We have in our assortment a bivalent valve, which is then a 2-3-way valve in 1 4-way body. So by that you could, instead of having 2 3-way valves and 2 actuators, you have 1 valve and 1 actuator. So it simplifies the way of controlling. However, you need then to connect the tubes on the right spot. And once you have made that, you could forget the application then. So by that we could improve, but it depends on the application as such. Is it then just a 100 square meter housing with 1 domestic hot water tank, then it's just 1 changeover valve. But when you start then to do different zonings, levels in the housing, then you get more of refinements.
You mentioned there obviously at the start of that piece that you're having one valve rather than two. So from an installer point of view, which is obviously where I'm coming from, that's less work, less material. So although you're a premium product, it probably works out more cost efficient because you're piping up one valve rather than two, and you're wiring up one actuator rather than two. So that's a good point to bring up, I think.
And but the code of practice then doesn't make it that easy to sell. So the for instance the bivalent valve has been an OEM valve because they have understood then how then to make the installation compact, cost savings, but in the same time reach the efficiency of the appliance which is needed.
I mean, that must be a big thing, going back to the OEM thing for you guys, when you have all the big names in the manufacturing heat pump world, boiler world, coming to you saying, "Make us a valve, please." It's just testament to the quality and obviously what you guys stand for.
Yeah, as you say, when the OEMs come, we do the solution. We get their trust, and that trust in the cooperation also is assigned to the market, and also introducing a new type of system. Okay, how then to be messiahs? Yeah, then the OEMs is a good way of Esbe then to use how to make the plumbing and the systems out there in an efficient way. So it's important in our marketing to have the OEMs then to spread the word.
Brilliant. So where do you see Esbe sort of in the next 5-10 years?
I still see that we have the roots here in South Sweden, Reftele, and we are then, as the market is evolving, not only that we are bringing in heat pumps, but the markets as such we are getting in more of renewable electricity. It's not only produced by nuclear or water hydropower here in Sweden. It's also more of these which are related to sun and solar, and they are not. You cannot always rely upon them, which means that the daily electricity price is going up and down. So then that the OEMs and the controller systems are there in order then to follow the electricity pricing, smart grids, etc. And by that, they need to have some storage. And the storage could be water-based. And when the storage are water-based, the high temperature is there, then they need some devices, valves, then to mix it down to the right temperature. So I see that the market is growing for Esbe. Or the market potential is growing for Esbe. So we are getting more intelligent in the future.
Yeah, moving with the times. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Lovely. I think we'll wrap it up there. Henrik, thank you very much.
Okay. Yep. Nice to be here.